scale. So again, this stuff is for published works, books, periodicals, other things. Before 1923, the works are in the public domain. So that's super awesome. Now, what can you do with that work? You can do pretty much everything, right? So,
right. That's my guess was going to be based on the fact that Joann's is selling fabric with that on it.
That's right. So they're doing it because it's a public domain image too. They're not paying a the fabric maker is not paying a royalty, and so you can do whatever you want with it. It doesn't preclude you from doing something just because somebody at Joann's is doing it. Now we saw we have some panels of Klimt, Gustav Klimt, the Kiss, and that Robert Kaufman just put out. And what we did is we looked at those, and it turned out that they had added extra stuff to the images, which is kind of interesting. So by adding the images, like if you do something with that and you add stuff to it, that stuff that you add to it is you have a copyright in the extra stuff you add to it. Does that make sense? Now, so they did that, I suspect, so that they wanted to artistically make it different, right? I mean, they wanted to make it a full panel, or whatever reason they added extra green stuff around one side. It doesn't necessarily, I mean, it technically means that it's a derivative work. It technically means they hold the copyright in it, but the question always would be, like, does that matter? It might matter if another fabric company copied their exact panel, that would be infringement, but it isn't something that, well, if you took a Klimt painting and you added the green to it for your personal use, is Robert Kaufman going to be upset? They're probably not going to care, right? So it's this degree of when does it matter? It's probably more than you needed to know. So back to your octopus. So what are you going to do with this public domain octopus?
Oh, so I'm going to make a quilt for the sister with the print up in Minnesota, and do an applique of that, similar to the one I showed you earlier.
It's very cool.
Except I'm going to do a different background. I'm going to do a layer cake and charm pack friendly lozenge quilt. Kind of lays out in an X's and O's pattern.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, if it had been under copyright, do you feel like you could have still done the same thing, right? Because you'd done it with Calvin and Hobbes.
So I feel like I could have made the same quilt, but maybe not shared it as a quilt along for the rest of the.
Yeah.
And I always kind of wonder how that falls under the whole fair use rules, right? Like I've made this Calvin and Hobbes quilt, and it's not a problem if I'm just giving it to some friends, but if I'm sharing it on Facebook with just my friends, it's probably still fine. But if I'm putting it out there in public and trying to eventually try to monetize it, that feels problematic.
And that's right. That's super astute, right? Because I keep trying to say, like, when does it matter? And it matters when we start to monetize. And sometimes it doesn't. It depends on the copyright holder. But that's when we get into a situation where we have to be more careful. If you make it for a baby, that's not a big deal. If you sell it so other people can buy it for a baby, then we are more careful. So you've got good instincts on that. All right, so tell me more about, first of all, tell me about the quilt along. We are getting some people really want to do a gypsy wife quilt along. It's like it's growing organically. The army is rising, and they want to do that. So I think we probably will, because you know what the army wants, we do. But because that's how armies work, right? No, I'm just kidding. People are like, oh, okay. So tell me about the quilt along and what your thoughts are about the quilt along. And then,
I love quilt alongs. That was like my the first time I ever ventured outside my, like, I can only do squares and rectangles box was a free quilt along that Pat Sloan did, her solstice challenge. So it was like a new block every week for half the year, and then you put it all together.
Very cool.
And then we do the Bonnie Hunter Mystery Quilt every year, which is around Black Fridays when it starts. And it's just like, it's so fun to be able to look at a bunch of quilts that different people are making in a different colorway, or they'll change just a few things here or there. And to be able to see, essentially the same quilt with a bunch of different takes on it is just the coolest.
Very cool. So any advice on the quilt along, on organizing the quilt along? I'm a little nervous about this part. We haven't quite figured out how that's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't. I was going to follow your lead because we don't really know what we're doing yet either.
Awesome.
I think on Instagram, it's nice to have a dedicated hashtag because then people can follow the hashtag and see what everyone else is up to.
Okay. Sounds great.
I think the pacing is important, but it's so impossible to get it right because they've got people who are quilting every day and people who only get to do it once a week.
Right.
So it's hard.
Right. Interesting. All right. Well, we'll figure this all out. And with the quilt-alongs, have you had the videos of how to do it or tips on the different blocks? Does any of that happen with quilt-alongs?
Yeah. On Bonnie Hunter's, she does a great job of giving you like super close-up, detailed pictures of how to get a better result.
Interesting.
I would be, so like with the Gypsy Wife, well.
Oh, it's such a, those are see, the problem is that those patterns are so, it's Jen Kingwell, and they're so complicated. You know? I mean, I have her, it's a Small World one, and it's driving me completely insane. So, tell me.
Right, because you're having to learn a new block almost every week, right? Which is.
Yeah, and it's just, there's a lot, you know what I mean? Like, and it's like, it's just a little bit, there's just a lot. It's not. Yeah, I mean, there's different strategies to do it. Some people just do all the blocks. Some do it in the particular, like, areas, sections. A lot of people find that if they do the blocks, I don't know, we got to look. There's a lot out there about this thing. So
yeah, a lot of feedback from people about how they put it together.
Yeah.
And I would worry, too, about doing videos when you're doing a quilt along with someone else's pattern, too, right? Like, I think as long as you don't give away the measurements, maybe it's okay, but I wouldn't want to
I
put a video out there that allows people to make it without buying our pattern.
Yeah, I mean, I think that making the different blocks is fine. That's a good question. Making the measurements aren't protected, so that's interesting too. But the selection, arrangement, and coordination is, and being a market replacement for the pattern also is. So you're right. We'd have to make sure that we didn't give away the pattern, unless it was a closed, like you have to sign in, kind of, you've already bought the book. I had this really weird experience. So I really like paper piecing. And so I had somebody, I found when I was looking around for It's a Small World, somebody had made paper piecing for the blocks, because it'd make it easier. But she made you take a, like, what did she call it? A hostage picture. You had to take a picture of, like, the book in your hand and a photograph and send it to her, and then she would send you so she felt like that was a way to not usurp the market. I haven't interviewed her. I should totally interview her. Because it was before the project,
that's really interesting. I saw some
know?
Paper piecing patterns for a few of the blocks in the Gypsy Wife, and they essentially just said, like, go buy the pattern before you use these. But they weren't enforcing it. The proof of life hostage picture. Proof of life
hostage picture. It was so funny. Because then I was like, okay, I guess I'm kind of game for anything. So, like, sure, I'll send you a picture of mine. But I thought, like, that's just so weird, right? Because copyright doesn't make you, that's not part of copyright. Take a hostage picture and show. But what she was trying to say is she's not a market replacement, which is that, and that really is fair use. Fair use has 4 factors. We'll talk about it. But the last one is this a market replacement? And she was making sure that it wasn't. So I thought that was really smart and interesting. Way to go.
And really, like, so was she selling those, or
she wasn't? Yeah. And then you got a
really
PDF, of
kind thing to do for the person who the pattern belongs to too. Like, she's going out of her way to make sure that she's not harming that person's business.
Yeah, nice. I thought so too. It's really interesting. So I feel like, I don't know. I feel like I failed on It's a Small World. I was thinking of maybe having the It's a Small World quilt, like, have it. What is it called? Is it? I'm sure there's a name for it, but I can't remember. Like, I want to take the book and, like, have somebody start it, and then when they got frustrated, they can move it on to the next person, so that we could get it done. But I feel like I failed at that one. So But I don't know. We'll try it again. It's just
that's a neat idea. It's sort of like what do they call it? A round robin.
That's what I was thinking. Right. Like, but round robin with just one project, not like everybody, round robins usually we all make stuff and then we move it on. It's just like, can we get this stupid quilt done? Like that's the question. All right, cool. Well, I have to ask you a couple more questions because you have your video on. First, you've got a really cool thing on the wall. Is that is that a project you're working on, or what is it? Do you see it?
Oh, the rosette?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is
English.
I can't pronounce the author's name. This is Lapacicalia is what the pattern's called. And it's English paper piecing.
I thought it was English paper piecing. So that's the other thing that is, so when some of the quilting army went to Paducah, they went to paper pieces, and they all got crazy, and they brought me back a bazillion of these kits, different people, different kits. So I think English paper piecing is going to be part of the summer. Do you have any suggestions or thoughts about how to be successful in English paper piecing?
Well, I started this project well over a year ago and haven't made a ton of progress. So I don't know. I think that getting your pieces from paper pieces is a great idea. I think a lot of people want to save money and cut their own. And if you start out with slightly wonky papers, you're going to be real frustrated.
Yeah. And there's the new Hexicon book, which we've got. But that one, you're supposed to photocopy it and cut it out, or you can get the kit of the things. We also have kits of papers. I also saw somebody recently that did it on freezer paper. There's something so that they don't have to take the blocks out, so that it stays in. So I thought that was interesting too. Do you glue or do you sew based or glue based?
I glue based. Yeah. I glue based, and I started with one of those sew line pens. Yeah. They're really expensive and they don't last that long.
Yeah.
So when that ran out, I just bought a purple Elmer's glue stick, and it works great.
It does. Have you tried to remove them yet? That was my question: is how hard is it going to be to remove the pieces?
So I pulled a couple just to see how hard it was going to be, and it's a little fiddly. I hole punched all of mine, so they've all got this little hole in them.
Yeah.
So you can stick a crochet hook in there and kind of wiggle it out that way.
And did it work?
Yeah, it was a little tough. You had to run a needle or run your crochet hook around underneath the edge of the fabric.
But the glue stick wasn't too, because I used basting glue as an example, and it turns out that is really strong stuff. So oh my gosh, it's like the papers are stuck in there for good. I think, I don't know.
Well, the Elmer's is water based, so I've heard that if you mist it or run a steam iron over it, that they'll pop out more easily. But I haven't tried it yet.
I wonder if the basting one is too. I haven't looked. I'll look at that. It's that Roxanne's glue thing. Okay, that's cool. Any other thoughts about any other thoughts about your experience with that?
I would say there's a good Facebook group out there that's specific to the Lapacicalia, but there's other ones too, and they've got a wealth of information about what kind of thread they like and what kind of needles. I like the number 11 Milners because they're long and really thin, so you can get just 2 threads on the edge of your block so that you can't see.
So I've been watching, the Craftsy classes are all free this weekend. I don't know if you, so I've been watching an English, stop, sorry, kitten and being naughty. I've been watching the English paper piecing one yesterday, and she had a technique for doing machine paper piecing.
I've seen a couple on Facebook where people actually were just instead of trying to hide my stitches, I'm going to do it on the machine and use the contrasting thread. And
so machine piecing. What she was doing, machine paper piecing. So what she was suggesting was invisible thread in both the bobbin and in the regular part of the machine, and then she was using this particular stitch. So I don't know. I think why not try? I'm up for trying, but that's reason why you do English paper piecing, so you can have a hand project. But I thought it was interesting that she that was a strategy. So
so the neat one that I saw was I don't know what the name of the stitch was, but it almost looked like a blanket stitch, but it had a little jut out on either side of the seam.
Oh.
And she just went with it. She picked a contrasting thread, went straight down the seam, and it was really. and made that choice on other pieces, and it was really cool.
That's cool. So it did the little jut out thing, not just on one side, but on she had it open. She had